Right, well, it's 7 o'clock, so let's get the show on the road. Hello, everybody. Welcome to you all who are here and those who are still arriving. My name, of course, is Mark Grant. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been working with chronic pain for over 20 years. I've conducted some research on chronic pain treatments. I've created some apps and written a book. So it's an area that I have a bit of experience in. And I'm offering this webinar tonight as part of the Australian Psychological Society's Pain Week events. So the Society is promoting a lot of educational webinars and information sessions about how to cope with chronic pain. As the title of my webinar suggests, I'm coming from a very particular point of view, and that is the conceptualization of chronic pain as a brain-related problem. And I'll explain why that is, but basically there has been a revolution in the way doctors and scientists think about chronic pain. And in recent years, you'd be aware that there's been this revolution in our understanding of the brain and concepts like neuroplasticity. So that's really opened up the way to new treatments, and that's what I want to share with you tonight. Before I do that, I just want to very quickly tell you what you're going to learn tonight. You're going to learn why chronic pain exists, what its evolutionary purpose is, because it seems like a pretty useful, unnecessary thing, doesn't it? You're going to learn how your brain maintains pain, or why it does that. You know, why it does something that would seem to be so useless and destructive. You're going to learn the real difference between chronic pain and acute pain. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on explaining these things, just enough to help you understand where I'm coming from with the strategies that I'm going to be describing tonight. And then I'm going to describe six strategies, 6 things you can do to change your brain, change your pain. And I'm not going to be talking about, if you've been in chronic pain for any length of time, you'll be familiar with the idea of changing your thinking, not catastrophizing, the use of meditation, relaxation, activity scheduling. Well, I'm not going to be talking about any of those things here, for the simple reason that you can find them anywhere. And I really wanted to offer you something that was different, that was innovative, as well as being useful and effective. So this is going to be different. The first thing to say is that chronic pain does not come from your body. I know it feels like that, but really, once you've been in pain for a while, the signals that come from the body, or nociception as it's called, are actually only a relatively small contributing factor to your experience of pain. And this might sound a bit radical or counterintuitive, but it rests on the fact that if you didn't have a brain, you wouldn't know that you had pain. So what's the brain got to do with it? Well, neuroscientists have discovered that people with chronic pain have changed patterns of brain activity. And there are a lot of things we could talk about, but there are 2 important ones that you need to know about. One is increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, or the PFC, as I've called it there, which is responsible for thinking, and the amygdala, which is the part of your brain that's responsible for fear. And the second major brain change and activity in chronic pain sufferers is that they have increased communication between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, those areas of the brain associated with thinking and feeling. And you might two things about this. One is that we're not talking about areas of the brain that are associated with receiving sensory signals from the body. We're talking about areas of your brain that are involved in thinking and feeling. So right there, that tells you that there's something else going on with pain that's not just about sensory processing. And secondly, the effect of those two phenomena is that your brain becomes it becomes hypervigilant, and it becomes less able to extinguish negative associations. In other words, your brain's more likely to link one thing to another in a bad way and to not be able to not do that. So your brain is overexcited, and it's making bad or catastrophic connections. And there are a lot of other things that are going on in your brain when you're in chronic pain, and that maintain your pain, which are really, really beyond the scope of our talk tonight. But just very quickly, one other area of brain activity that is altered in chronic pain sufferers is biochemical levels. So if you just look at the top of the brain there, you'll see the word stress, and that could be referring to the illness or the injury that caused the pain, or it could be referring to earlier trauma or stress in your life that has predisposed your nervous system to you developing pain. And chronic stress, stress, pain, or that you suffer over an extended period of time, causes a decrease in GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that keeps everything in balance in your brain. And so if you have decreased GABA, means there's decreased levels in norepinephrine, which sort of generates energy. It's a kind of adrenaline, and a host of other chemicals which regulate mood and pain and sleep. So you have decreased serotonin, which is necessary for sleep, and that leads to fatigue, which is a big problem in chronic pain sufferers. You have decreased dopamine. Dopamine is the pleasure neurotransmitter. So a lot of chronic pain sufferers feel numb, they feel depressed, they have more negative thinking, and they find it hard to experience pleasure or joy. You have decreased endorphins, which basically endorphins are your body's own natural pain regulating substances. So decreased endorphins means that basically your body's got less resistance to pain. You're more susceptible to pain. And you have decreased cortisol, and cortisol helps dampen down inflammation. So decreased cortisol leaves you more vulnerable to the pain of inflammation. And last but not least, you have decreased BDNF, which stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's a bit of a mouthful, but basically BDNF is kind of like brain food. It's a little substance that helps repair and maintain cell health in the brain. So as you can see, there's a lot going on biochemically in the brain that I guess makes you more vulnerable to pain and less able to cope with pain at the level of your nervous system. And this is why you hurt more than you should. And this is why you hurt sometimes when you haven't actually done anything wrong. You haven't been out running or doing activity beyond your means, and yet you still hurt because it's being internally generated by these imbalances in your brain activity and biochemical levels. And this imbalance is happening regardless of what you do. So what's the effect of all those brain changes? Well, basically it's a bit like if you walk through the long grass, you create a track, and repetitively you create tracks in the long grass. And so the more often you experience pain, the more often those patterns of changed brain activity get laid down, and basically the brain becomes programmed to have chronic pain. So just to summarize this, brain, the areas of the brain that are associated with pain are mostly to do with thinking and feeling. This slide shows a summary of all the areas of the brain that are involved in pain, and only two of them, the sensory cortex and the spinal cord, are major receptors of sensory information from the brain. So of those 9 areas of the brain that are involved in pain and the experience of pain, only 2 of them are involved in sensory processing. Just emphasizing that point. So that's the brain. The next question is, why chronic pain? Why does it exist? We know that acute pain is there to warn us of injury and, to tell us to rest, to go to the doctor, to get treatment, to allow our body to heal us. But what could be the purpose of chronic pain? Up until fairly recently, it was thought that chronic pain was just maladaptive, that there was no evolutionary value for it. And you may have been told, look, don't worry about it. It's not doing you any good. It's not, not telling you anything you don't already know. Just get on with your life the best that you can. But no one had ever really tested whether or not chronic pain had any evolutionary value until a few years ago. Some researchers at an English university did an experiment with some squid, and they actually cut off some of the tentacles on some of the squid, not all of them, and then they anesthetized some of the squid whose tentacles they'd cut off, and they didn't anesthetize others. So basically the squid whose tentacles were not anesthetized were the chronic pain experimental group, whereas the squid without their tentacles cut off and the ones who were anesthetized didn't have chronic pain. And then the experimenters put the squid in a tank with predator fish, and amazingly they found that the squid who had the tentacles cut off, who were not anesthetized, that is the chronic pain squid, had the highest survival rate against the threat of the predator fish. And so they concluded the propensity to develop chronic pain is an evolutionary encoded feature of complex neural systems. The value of chronic pain is that it's an overinflated but an evolutionary response to danger. So in thousands of years ago, the person with chronic pain was more vulnerable to being attacked and devoured by predators than the person without chronic pain. Sorry, the person with injury. So chronic pain was developed to warn them, to give them an increased sense of danger. Now, of course, in our 20th century society, we don't need that so much. We're not likely to be eaten by a lion or a tiger. But unfortunately, our nervous systems are 10, 20, 30,000 years old, and they haven't quite caught up with evolution. So modern science to the rescue. What's the answer? How can we turn off the chronic pain response? Use your brain. And now I'm going to show you 6 ways to do that. First of all, I want to introduce you to some of the amazing things that your brain does. Firstly is attention. Attention is probably the #1 function of your brain. All right, if you think about it, 40,000 years ago, living in the savannah, you needed to know what was going on around you. So attention gave you the ability to pick up on what was happening and helped you to survive. The second most important brain function is memory. So memory gives you the ability to say, that's where the tigers or the bears live, I'll stay away from there. Memory helps you to keep in mind what's important. So those are the two most important functions of the brain. Here's a few others that are important. Imagination, sensory processing, so the ability to notice what's going on in your body. And last but not least, learning. So learning to ride a bike, learning to meditate, learning arithmetic. Your brain is a learning machine, really, and it never stops learning. Remember that your brain never stops learning. All right. So we have all these wonderful abilities that we can harness, and I'm going to show you how to do that now to change the brain activity that's associated with your pain. And just to summarize, these are the 6 brain smart pain control strategies that I'm going to share with you tonight. And bearing in mind what I've just shown you about the capacities of your brain and your brain functioning. So I'm going to show you how to use focused attention to change your pain. I'm going to show you how to use focused attention plus bilateral stimulation to change your pain. And I'll explain to you what bilateral stimulation is in a minute. I'm going to show you how to unleash the power of your imagination to change your pain. Einstein said, imagination is intelligence at work. I'm going to show you how to utilize mental avoidance to control your pain. I'm going to show you how to make peace with your past to change your brain, change your pain. And last but not least, I'm going to show you how to actually teach your brain to function differently through visual imagery in a way that will change your pain. So the first strategy is focused attention. Now, as I said at the start, I'm not going to talk about mindfulness per se, because this is something that you can find anywhere, and it's online. It's just every self-help book. But I just want to introduce you to the concept, because it's key to focused attention. So mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So it's kind of pure focused attention. Now, how can we, other than meditation, what are some other ways that we can use mindfulness to change our pain? So that's just a quick summary of the research about meditation. And again, I'm not going to talk about it at length, but to say that it is a valuable and worthwhile strategy, and you should really seriously consider taking up a daily practice of meditation of some kind if you have chronic pain. I'm really not going to spend any more time on that here. The first mindfulness strategy I want to share with you is the use of mindfulness plus sensory focus. So you'll see in the diagram there that the woman there's a little red circle in her shoulder, and let's say that's her pain. And when you're in pain, you tend to focus on the pain. It sort of grabs your attention. But there are other areas of your body where you don't have pain. Other areas of your body, hopefully, that just feel normal and natural and pain-free. So what this exercise involves doing is focusing deliberately on a selected area of your body that has no pain. So in this case, it's the little blue circle in the woman's foot. So let's say that if you're watching this now, you have pain wherever you have it in your body. Just notice where you feel that pain, and notice the sensations of it. Do this now. Just get a sense of that pain in your mind, if you can. Just noticing what it feels like, the qualities of it, whether it's hot or cold, hard or soft, big or small. And then when you've done that, just put that aside for a minute and direct your attention to some other area in your body where you have no pain. An area of your body that feels pain-free, that feels comfortable, that feels natural. And notice what that feels like. Loose, soft, natural, okay, free of tension or discomfort. And then when you've got a sense of that clearly in your mind, let your attention come back to the area of your pain. But imagine as you bring your attention back to the area of your pain, you're also carrying with you a little bit of that awareness of comfort from that area of your body where there's no pain. And notice again now the area of pain and discomfort. And just noticing again what that feels like you did before. And noticing whether it feels any different or not now. And if it does, that's great. And if it doesn't, that's fine. And then put that aside again and direct your attention back again towards that area of comfort and no pain. And focus again on what that area feels like, just noticing the sensations that go with that feeling of no pain and comfort. Just noticing whatever you notice about that area, just really paying attention to it for a moment. That's right. That's it. And then when you've got that clearly in your mind, bring your attention back to the area of pain again. And again, imagine that as you're doing that, you're bringing with you a little bit of that awareness of comfort and relief. And just notice again what it feels like there now, that area of pain and discomfort. And any changes in the way you seem to be experiencing that now. And whatever you notice is just fine. There's no right or wrong here. And now put that awareness of your pain aside again, and again direct your attention back towards that area of no pain, that area of comfort and relief. And just notice again what that feels like. Just noticing the sensations and the feelings that make up that area of no pain. That's right. Just taking a moment to do that now, focusing on the area of no pain. Just noticing whatever you notice. And then when you've got that clearly in your mind, bring your attention back again to the area of pain or discomfort. And again, imagining that as you bring your attention back across, you're carrying with you a little bit of that awareness of comfort and relief from that area of no pain as you bring your attention back to the area of pain again now. And again, notice what it seems like now and any differences that you might notice in the way you're perceiving that area. Now, hopefully, you'll be noticing that as you do this process, as you go backwards and forwards, your experience of the area of discomfort is actually starting to change. Now, if we had the time, I would do this a bit longer until really you're experiencing some significant change in that area of discomfort. But for the sake of the exercise, that's a demonstration. You can get an audio recording of this exercise off my Overcoming Pain app, which I will be giving you details of at the end of this talk tonight. So that's a new application of mindfulness where you're coupling mindfulness, your brain's ability to pay attention with your brain's ability to process sensory information, whether it's pain or comfort, in a way that enables you to change your brain, change your pain. And I acknowledge Peter Levine for inspiring this exercise. It's based on a psychological process he calls pendulation. This next exercise is also making use of focused attention. It's called assisted mindfulness or somatic processing. Now, we're familiar with mindfulness and the idea of just paying attention non-judgmentally to our experience. But as anyone who's ever tried to do mindfulness was probably noticed, and it's very hard to stay focused on your present experience without other thoughts or feelings intruding. So this exercise involves somewhat similar to the last, but a bit different, assisted mindfulness to help you resolve physical tension and discomfort. And again, I'm going to very briefly just give you a taste of how it looks and feels. So again, I just want you to focus in on your body now and noticing any area of tension or discomfort that you might be experiencing at the moment. And just observing it and noticing where you feel it in your body. And just noticing whatever you notice, non-judgmentally. Just letting whatever happens, happens. There's no right or wrong. Just noticing, just letting your experience be there, as though you were watching it like scenery from a train. That's right. Just sitting beside your feelings. Just being present to those feelings and sensations. Nothing to bother, nothing to do. And as you pay attention and continue to pay attention, notice whatever happens happening. Just noticing whatever you notice. Just letting whatever needs to happen, happen. Perhaps seeing what's behind those feelings, or letting those feelings do whatever they need to do in order to complete whatever it is that needs to be completed. Just noticing, just letting whatever needs to happen, happen. That's right. Again, just because of the time constraints, if I was doing this in person with you, I'd go on a bit longer. But I would say that a lot of you who just did that then would have noticed that as you sat paying attention to whatever it was you were feeling in your body and followed my instructions about just tuning in and letting whatever happens happen, that it sort of mysteriously started to change or transform, really without your seeming to do anything. Except that because of the fact that I'm guiding your attention, it's actually a lot easier to stay with the feeling and let whatever needs to happen, happen, than it would be if you were sitting in a room by yourself, just concentrating on your breathing and, trying not to let your mind get caught up with other concerns and feelings. So that's another variation of the use of attention to change, your somatic experience. Now, the second strategy is the use of attention plus bilateral stimulation, which those of you who are listening who have done EMDR training or familiar with it will know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those of you that are not, EMDR is a trauma therapy that involves many elements, but at its heart, a desensitization process where the person with the problem focuses on their memory and their image and the feeling of what the problem is, while simultaneously focusing on bilateral eye movements, audio tones, or physical tapping. And that process has been found to change the visual, sensory, and emotional elements of remembered experiences, be it trauma or pain. And the reason that this is useful and helpful for clients with chronic pain is that chronic pain is stressful, and anyone who's in pain is often in a state of hypervigilance, not unlike a sufferer of post-traumatic stress disorder. Their body is in a state of constant stress, not knowing when the next pain flare-up is going to happen, or how long the pain is going to last. So bilateral stimulation offers us a way of capturing the part of the brain that pays attention to novel stimuli, which is known as the human survival response or the orienting response, and really retuning that response to create a relaxation response that changes the experience of pain. So the orienting response, or the survival response, is the part of your brain that when it sees or hears something novel or unfamiliar, it goes into sensory processing mode. It has to know what that is, and it's part of your fight-flight response. All right, so you can imagine that in chronic pain, your fight-flight response is always on. So this is where bilateral stimulation comes in, because bilateral stimulation is activating your fight-flight response, but then it deactivates it. So if you're in pain and your fight-flight response is already activated, and then you're subject to bilateral stimulation, which could be auditory or visual or tactile stimulation, your brain, in a sense, your fight-flight response is being hijacked, because your brain goes off focusing on the pain, and it has to deal with that novel additional stimulus. And after 30 seconds, when your brain realizes that you're not about to be mauled by a tiger, it automatically goes into a relaxed state, which is known as, for the sake of this exercise, present orientation. That means that you're not worried, you're not tense, you're not worried about what's going to jump out the bush at you. You are in a relaxed, present-oriented state. If something happened that you needed to get up and attend to it, you could, but otherwise your nervous system is in a state of rest, mentally and physically. So you can imagine that if you or your client has chronic pain, and you can get their body out of that state of tension into a relaxed state, their experience of their pain, to the extent that it's driven by psychological factors, which all chronic pain is to some degree, is going to change. So I was going to give a demonstration, but I think just because of the way the time is going, you sort of have to take my word for that. But you know, if you haven't had EMDR, you can check out that experience on the app with any of the bilateral stimulation tracks. The next strategy is to unleash the power of your imagination. Now, Einstein famously said that imagination is more important than reality. And imagination is not divorced from reality. Imagination starts with reality. So I'll give you an example, and then I'll give you a couple more ways to do this. So this is a beach near Melbourne where I live, called Half Moon Bay, and I was treating a lady recently who had to give birth to a baby that was very painful and quite drawn out, and she couldn't have painkillers. And so what she did, and no one really told her to do this, she just worked it out for herself, was she remembered when, as a child, she had floated in the water at Half Moon Bay and looked up at the red cliffs and just been entranced by the experience of floating in the water and taking in the beautiful scenery. And she went away in her mind for the duration of that birth experience, that painful birth experience, by remembering that place and imagining herself there. And she was able to cope with it very well as a result of that. So there are many, many ways that we can harness our imagination, but the best ones tend to involve the memory of natural phenomena such as water or light. People don't tend to think of skyscrapers or freeways when they want to relax. They think of trees and rivers and water and light and things like that. So then some people will have very mystical, they're able to summon very mystical sorts of things. Some people, it's just much more grounded in reality, such as the memory of the sun on their skin. But we've all had, natural experiences of being in nature where we've felt well and we've felt relaxed and we've enjoyed, that connection with those natural elements. And it's not surprising that the ancients, our ancestors, viewed water and light particularly as the foundation of life. And I think in our modern world, those of us particularly who live in large urban areas, our lives have, become a little bit denatured, and we've lost perhaps that connection with the sense of well-being and comfort that we can just get from those natural things. So really, imagination is about working with memory to access memories of enjoyable natural experiences that will make you, can help you to feel better. And I want to say, just to finish by saying that it has to be grounded in reality. So a few very imaginative souls can imagine a white light coming down out of the sky and flooding their body and wrapping their pain in its healing energy and making them feel good. Probably the majority of us, it's going to have to be something that's more grounded in remembered experiences. And then for a small minority, it's more difficult. And some of the later strategies will be helpful for them. The last imaginative strategy is to use antidote, what's called antidote imagery. Now, just because we're running on time, I'm just going to tell you what this is. And again, this exercise is on the Overcoming Pain app. But antidote imagery involves getting a mental image of the pain in your mind based on its sensory qualities. So if it's hot, you might imagine a burning coal, and then imagining the opposite of that, something cool that could put out that fire. So, a bucket of ice water or an iceberg or an ice block. But again, the trick is that you're using the mind, you're using imagery, you're using the mind's ability to mentalize the pain as a basis for creating antidote imagery to change the pain. This is a very powerful strategy. But all of these strategies can only be done when a person is in a relaxed, calm state. So that's why I started with the bilateral stimulation and the sensory processing. It's very hard to access your imagination if you're in a highly stressed state and you can't concentrate. Okay, the next strategy is one that's very, very, well, I think probably every chronic pain sufferer does it to some degree. And that is basically to sort of mentally take yourself someplace else when you're in pain. So this can take the form of remembering a pleasant event or doing something that you enjoy in the present. A lot of chronic pain sufferers are also in a kind of space, sort of dissociated state. They're sort of not present, and they're not their usual selves, and they may not be eating food, they may not be relating to people, or they may have withdrawn and got into themselves. And this is actually a survival strategy, because by disconnecting from the world, they're conserving energy to help them cope. And this is a kind of form of what's known as dissociation. And this has actually been something that people have been doing for hundreds of years, and it's been recognized as such. So if you'll have heard the phrase, he or she is off with the pixies or off with the fairies. And in Ireland in the Middle Ages, it was observed, when they observed that unwell people, were kind of flat in their emotions, and they weren't eating and they weren't themselves, and they seemed a bit disconnected. They thought that their souls had been captured by the fairies, and that's what they meant. That's where that saying comes from. He is off with the fairies. And it's not a bad thing. It's a survival strategy. So part of coping with chronic pain can just be finding activities that a person can do that take their mind away from the pain experience. The fifth strategy is to make peace with your past. So we know that statistically a lot of chronic pain sufferers have had what we call adverse childhood. So that means that they haven't had adequate attachment, or there may have been abuse or neglect in their childhood. And this primes a person for chronic pain, because people who didn't receive adequate love and affection in childhood tend to grow up with negative beliefs and feelings about themselves, that they may feel that they deserve to be punished, or that their needs don't count, or that somehow by their being in pain, they're protecting others, or that there's something fundamentally wrong with them. And these beliefs are often unconscious, and they're often a manifestation of a disconnection between a person's inner child self and adult self. Now, to my shame, when I started out as a psychologist, I thought the idea that we have an inner child was ridiculous. I'm a big boy. I'm not a child. But there are times in my life when I still feel like a 7-year-old Mark, and I think we all have that part of ourselves that feels young and doesn't feel like our age. And for people who have never addressed that, that tends to be the part that is active when they're in pain. They're being driven, they're being run really by negative emotions and negative beliefs. And these have to be uncovered and dealt with through some sort of process of integration between the emotional and mental sides of personality, or different ego states, as we refer to it in psychology. Again, not space to do this here tonight, but there is an exercise on the Overcoming Pain app called Healing the Split, which takes you on an inner child journey. And there, of course, there is therapy to get that as well. I would just add that all these statements also tend to be what's called double binds. So that means that there's a kind of hidden message in that communication. For example, chronic pain sufferers are often told you'll just have to learn to live with it. Well, actually, to the subconscious, that means that if I don't have pain, I'll die, or that you're responsible for your health. Well, that means that no matter how hard they try, if they're still in pain, they're a failure. So these thoughts are toxic and they're dangerous, and they have to be recognized and addressed in chronic pain sufferers. So again, the exercise for that on the app is called Healing the Split. Last but not least, as I've said before, the brain is always learning. So a few years ago, an English researcher by the name of D. Charms got a group of people who had chronic pain and hooked them up to an fMRI machine, and basically they did a few things with them. But one of the things they did was they pointed to the areas of the brain that maintain pain, and basically instructed the people in the experiment to imagine that they could change the activity in that area of their brain and change their pain. And lo and behold, 23% of the people in the experiment experienced an enhancement in their ability to control their pain intensity, and 38% of the people in the experiment reported an enhancement in their ability to control the unpleasantness of their pain. So, of course, that's not 100%, but that's a significant proportion of people who were able to get some control over their pain just by a few minutes a day of watching their brain in pain. Now, since we haven't yet got to the point where everyone can have their own fMRI at home, I have created a brain visualization on the Overcoming Pain app that replicates that process. I have no research on this yet, but my feeling is that for at least the 30% of people sorry, it's probably a bit less than that, perhaps 20. And then the people who have an average imagination, that this can only help retrain their brain to change the brain activity that's maintaining their pain. And these visualizations only a minute to 5 minutes long, so that it isn't something that requires a great deal of sustained attention or concentration. And I advise my chronic pain clients to do these visualizations 3 or 4 times a day for several months, in addition to all the other elements of treatment that they're receiving, such as emotional regulation, trauma processing, imagery and visualization, bilateral stimulation, EMDR, etc. And I've actually summarized all the elements that I think chronic pain sufferers need based on this approach, and I've called it Mark Grant's Pain Management Recipe, and you can find that on my Overcoming Pain website for free. So just to finish up, so this is my Overcoming Pain app. It has 3 playlists. One using top-down strategies from the brain. One using bottom-up strategies based on the body, and a collection of stress management strategies. So in total, there are over 25 sessions on that app. And that's one of a suite of apps that I've created for people with health-related problems addressing pain, anxiety, and insomnia. There's also my book, which is integrated with the app and also comes with a lot of the tracks that are on the app available as audio downloads. And if you'd like, for more information, you can visit my website, www.overcomingpain.com, or for more information about EMDR, emdraa.org is the website for the Australian EMDR Association. Thank you. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate the presentation. It definitely demonstrated some of the creative and innovative ways of working with people which are suffering with pain. So thank you very much.